George Strait pays tribute with flowers on stage for his wife, and what she did moved everyone. The smell of stale beer and broken dreams filled the air at Murphy's Bar on Lower Broadway in Nashville. It was the kind of place where aspiring country singers came to die, their hopes slowly drowning in cheap whiskey, and the harsh reality that Music City was not as welcoming as the postcards made it seem. Among the sea of worn-out faces and faded denim jackets, one young woman stood out like a diamond in the rough. Lisa Reynolds wiped down the sticky bar counter for the 100th time that evening, her calloused hands moving in practiced circles, while her mind wandered to places far beyond the smoky confines of Murphy's. At 23, she had the kind of natural beauty that country music was built on. Auburn hair that caught the neon lights just right, emerald eyes that held both innocence and determination, and a smile that could warm the coldest Nashville winter night. But it wasn't her looks that made her special. It was the voice. Every night, after the last drunk stumbled out into the street and the chairs were stacked on tables, Lisa would take out her battered acoustic guitar and sing to the empty room. Her voice was pure magic, a blend of Patsy Cline's heartbreak and Dolly Parton's sweetness, with something uniquely her own that made even the most jaded bartender stop and listen. She had that rare quality that couldn't be taught in any music school. She could make you feel every word she sang, as if she had lived it herself. But tonight was different. Tonight, Lisa's hands were shaking as she served drinks to the usual crowd of regulars and tourists. Word had spread through Nashville like wildfire. George Strait, the king of country himself, was coming to town for a special benefit concert at the Grand Ole Opry House. And somehow, through a miracle that Lisa still couldn't believe, Murphy's Bar had been contracted to provide catering services for the backstage area. "Can you believe it, honey?" called out Marge, the 60-year-old waitress, who had become like a mother to Lisa. "George Strait, right here in our little corner of Nashville." Marge's weathered face was lit up with excitement as she balanced a tray of beer bottles. "I've been listening to that man since before you were born, sweetie. Unwound, foolhardy memory. All my exes live in Texas. Lord, that man could sing the phone book and make it sound like poetry." Lisa's heart raced at the mention of those song titles. George Strait wasn't just any country star to her. He was the reason she had fallen in love with music in the first place. Growing up in a small town outside of Memphis, Lisa's childhood had been far from easy. Her father had abandoned the family when she was 8, leaving her mother to raise 3 children on a secretary's salary. Money was always tight, dreams seemed like luxuries they couldn't afford, and hope was something that felt as distant as the stars. But every Sunday evening, her mother would turn on the radio while they prepared dinner together, and George Strait's smooth voice would fill their tiny kitchen. Those were the only moments when Lisa saw her mother truly smile, when the worry lines around her eyes would soften, and she would hum along to "Check Yes or No" or "I Cross My Heart." It was during one of those Sunday evenings that 8-year-old Lisa had declared she wanted to be a country singer, and for the first time since her father left, her mother had looked at her with something that resembled pride. If you're enjoying this story and can relate to Lisa's dreams, please subscribe to our channel and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We love hearing your thoughts and stories. They inspire us to keep bringing you these heartfelt tales that celebrate the power of never giving up on your dreams. The years that followed were a blur of part-time jobs, community college classes, and every spare moment spent writing songs and practicing guitar. Lisa's mother had passed away from cancer when Lisa was 19, but not before making her daughter promise to keep chasing her musical dreams. "You've got something special, baby girl," she had whispered during one of their last conversations in the hospital. "Don't you ever let anyone tell you different." Armed with nothing but her mother's blessing, a used Toyota Camry, and a heart full of songs, Lisa had made the pilgrimage to Nashville 3 years ago. She had imagined herself walking into record labels and publishers with her demo CD, being discovered at open mic nights, or catching the attention of some big-name producer at the Bluebird Cafe. Reality, however, had been much harsher. Nashville was full of talented dreamers, and Lisa quickly learned that talent alone wasn't enough. You needed connections, money, luck, and something indefinable that industry people called the it factor. She had been rejected more times than she could count, told she was too traditional for modern country radio, too young to understand real heartbreak, too unknown to be worth the risk. Each rejection felt like a small death, but Lisa refused to give up. Working at Murphy's Bar had become her survival strategy. The pay was terrible, but it kept a roof over her head in a tiny studio apartment in East Nashville. More importantly, it kept her in the heart of Music City, where she could still believe that her big break was just around the corner. She had written over 200 songs in her 3 years in Nashville, each one a little piece of her soul poured out onto paper. Her favorite composition was a song called "When Your Eyes Can't See My Love." She had written it after watching an elderly couple at the bar one evening. The woman was clearly losing her sight, but the way her husband looked at her, the gentle way he guided her to their table, the tender words he whispered in her ear, it had inspired Lisa to write about a love so deep that it transcended physical limitations. The song was her masterpiece, but like all her others, it remained unheard by anyone who mattered in the music industry. Now, as Lisa prepared for what could be the most important night of her life, she felt a mixture of terror and excitement coursing through her veins. Frank Morrison, the owner of Murphy's Bar, had made it clear that this catering job was their biggest break ever. "This could put us on the map," he had told his staff during their pre-event meeting. "George Strait's people specifically requested authentic Nashville atmosphere, and somehow they picked us. Don't screw this up." But Lisa had bigger plans than just serving drinks and finger foods. Hidden in her locker was a manila folder containing her best songs, including "When Your Eyes Can't See My Love." She had been working up the courage for 3 years to approach someone in the industry, and tonight felt like destiny calling her name. George Strait himself would be there, possibly just a few feet away. If she could find the right moment, the right opportunity, maybe she could finally make her mother's dream, and her own, come true. The clock on the wall showed 6:30 p.m., and Lisa's shift at the Grand Ole Opry House would begin at 7. She untied her apron, grabbed her folder of songs, and took one last look at herself in the cracked mirror behind the bar. Her reflection showed a young woman on the verge of either triumph or devastation, but there was no turning back now. "This is it, Mama," she whispered to the empty air, thinking of the woman who had believed in her when no one else would. "Your little girl is finally going to take her shot." As Lisa walked out into the humid Nashville evening, she had no idea that her life was about to change in ways she never could have imagined. The benefit concert at the Grand Ole Opry House was about to become the stage for a story that would touch the hearts of thousands and prove that sometimes the most beautiful dreams are the ones that seem impossible to achieve. The Grand Ole Opry House stood like a temple in the Nashville twilight, its red brick facade glowing under the warm lights that welcomed country music pilgrims from around the world. Lisa had driven past this legendary venue countless times during her 3 years in Nashville, but she had never been inside. Tonight, she would finally walk through those sacred doors, not as a performer, but as part of the catering staff. Still, her heart hammered against her ribs as if she were about to take the stage herself. The backstage area was a controlled chaos of sound technicians, security personnel, and various crew members preparing for what everyone knew would be a special evening. George Strait's benefit concerts were legendary, not just for the music, but for the intimate atmosphere he created even in large venues. Tonight's show was raising money for Nashville's music therapy programs at children's hospitals, a cause close to the singer's heart since his own daughter had battled health issues years ago. Lisa found herself assigned to the VIP hospitality area, a converted dressing room where George Strait's family and closest friends would gather before and after the show. Her hands trembled as she arranged cheese platters and filled ice buckets with imported beer, knowing that at any moment her childhood hero might walk through that door. "Reynolds!" barked Derek Manning, the head catering supervisor who had made it clear from day one that he considered Lisa nothing more than a small-town dreamer who should know her place. Derek was a man in his 40s who wore his bitterness like a badge of honor, having spent 20 years in Nashville watching other people achieve the success that had eluded him. "Stop daydreaming and focus on your job. This isn't some honky-tonk where you can slack off." Lisa bit her tongue and continued arranging the food display, trying to ignore Derek's constant criticism. She had learned long ago that men like Derek fed off reactions, and the best strategy was to stay quiet and do her work. But tonight felt different. Tonight she could feel opportunity crackling in the air like electricity before a thunderstorm. As she worked, Lisa couldn't help but overhear conversations from the hallway outside. Security guards discussing the evening's timeline, musicians tuning their instruments, and then a voice that made her heart skip a beat. It was unmistakably George Strait himself, talking quietly with someone about the evening's set list. "I want to do I Cross My Heart tonight," she heard him say through the partially open door. "It feels right for this kind of evening, you know? Sometimes the old songs carry the most meaning." Lisa's eyes filled with tears at hearing those words in that familiar voice. "I Cross My Heart" was the song her mother used to hum while cooking Sunday dinner, the melody that had provided soundtrack to some of their happiest moments together. Without thinking, she began humming the tune softly while she arranged cocktail napkins. "That's a beautiful song, isn't it?" Lisa spun around so quickly that she nearly knocked over a tray of glasses. Standing in the doorway was a woman in her early 70s, elegantly dressed but with a warmth in her eyes that immediately put Lisa at ease. She had silver hair pulled back in a classic style and wore a simple but expensive-looking navy dress. There was something familiar about her, but Lisa couldn't quite place where she might have seen her before. "Oh, I'm sorry," Lisa stammered, feeling her cheeks burn with embarrassment. "I didn't know anyone was listening. I was just... The song means a lot to me." The woman stepped into the room and Lisa noticed she moved carefully, as if unsure of her footing. "Don't apologize, dear. You have a lovely voice. I'm Norma, by the way." She extended her hand with a gentle smile that reminded Lisa of her mother's warmth. "I'm Lisa," she replied, shaking the woman's hand and still trying to figure out why she seemed so familiar. Are you with the band?" Norma laughed, a sound like wind chimes on a summer evening. "Not exactly, honey. I'm George's wife." Lisa's mouth fell open, and she felt her knees go weak. She was standing face to face with Norma Strait, the woman who had been by George Strait's side through his entire legendary career, the inspiration behind some of country music's most beautiful love songs. The woman was practically country music royalty, and Lisa had been humming in front of her like some starstruck teenager. "Mrs. Strait, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. I should have recognized you," Lisa babbled, feeling more flustered by the second. "I'm just part of the catering staff. I shouldn't even be bothering you with my..." "Nonsense," Norma interrupted gently, settling into one of the chairs near the refreshment table. "Please call me Norma, and you weren't bothering me at all. In fact, hearing you hum that song brought back some beautiful memories. George wrote that for me, you know, back when we were just kids in love in Texas." Lisa's eyes widened. She had always assumed "I Cross My Heart" was written by professional songwriters for one of George's movies. Learning that it was actually his personal promise to his wife made the song even more meaningful. "I didn't know that," Lisa said softly. "That makes it even more special. My mother and I used to listen to that song every Sunday when I was growing up. After she passed away, Well, your husband's music helped me through some very dark times." Norma's expression softened even further. "I'm sorry about your mother, dear. Losing a parent is never easy, especially when you're young." She paused, studying Lisa's face with curiosity. "You mentioned having a lovely voice. Are you a singer yourself?" Lisa felt her heart racing. This was it. This was the moment she had dreamed about for years. Not exactly how she had imagined it, but here she was talking to Norma Strait about music and life and dreams. The manila folder with her songs was tucked safely in her jacket pocket, and she could feel it calling to her like a lifeline. Yes, Mom. I write songs too. I've been trying to make it in Nashville for 3 years now, but it's been..." Lisa trailed off, not wanting to sound like she was complaining to someone who had lived the dream she was chasing. "It's been difficult," Norma finished for her with understanding. "George and I remember those early days all too well. The rejection letters, the doors that wouldn't open, the nights when we wondered if we were just fooling ourselves." She reached over and patted Lisa's hand. "But look what persistence can accomplish." Before Lisa could respond, Derek Manning appeared in the doorway like a storm cloud, his face red with anger and embarrassment. Behind him stood 2 security guards and what appeared to be George Strait's tour manager. "Reynolds!" Derek shouted, causing both women to jump. "What the hell do you think you're doing? This is a VIP area, not a social hour. Mrs. Strait, I apologize for this girl's unprofessional behavior. She'll be reassigned immediately." Lisa felt her world crashing down around her. Her one chance to make a connection, her moment of destiny, was being destroyed by Derek's petty jealousy and power trip. She started to protest, but Derek wasn't finished. "I should have known better than to trust someone like you with an important assignment," he continued, his voice dripping with disdain. "You small-town girls come to Nashville thinking you're something special, but you're not. You're just another wannabe who needs to learn her place." The humiliation burned through Lisa like fire. In front of Norma Strait, in front of security guards and industry professionals, Derek was systematically destroying not just her evening, but her dignity. She felt tears building behind her eyes, but she refused to give him the satisfaction of seeing her cry. "Derek, please," she said quietly, trying to maintain some semblance of professionalism. "Mrs. Strait and I were just—" "I don't want to hear it," Derek snapped. He reached into his jacket and pulled out what appeared to be a manila folder, Lisa's folder, the one containing her precious songs. Her heart stopped as she realized he must have gone through her belongings during her shift. "And what is this amateur hour garbage?" Derek continued, waving the folder in the air. "Did you really think you could use this catering job to push your little hobby on Mr. Strait? This is exactly the kind of unprofessional behavior I was talking about." Before Lisa could react, Derek opened the folder and began pulling out her carefully typed song sheets, her handwritten lyrics, her hopes and dreams made tangible on paper. The room fell silent, except for the sound of tearing paper as Derek systematically destroyed 3 years' worth of Lisa's work. "No!" Lisa cried out, lunging forward to try to save her songs, but one of the security guards held her back. "This is what happens to dreamers who don't know their place," Derek said coldly, continuing to tear each sheet into pieces and letting them fall to the floor like confetti. "You're nobody, Reynolds. You're just a small-town girl serving drinks, and that's all you'll ever be." Lisa watched in horror as her life's work was reduced to scraps of paper scattered across the floor of the Grand Ole Opry House. Years of late-night writing sessions, moments of inspiration captured in melody and verse, her mother's memory preserved in song, all of it destroyed in seconds by a bitter man who wanted to crush her spirit. The security guards began escorting her toward the door, and Lisa knew her dream was over. But as she bent down to try to salvage at least one piece of her destroyed songs, her hand closed around a single sheet that had somehow survived Derek's rampage. Through her tears, she could see it was "When Your Eyes Can't See My Love," the song she had written about eternal love transcending physical limitations. As the guards led her away from the VIP area, away from her dreams, away from everything she had worked for, Lisa clutched that single piece of paper to her chest, like a drowning person holding onto driftwood. She didn't notice that Norma Strait had watched the entire scene with growing horror, or that the older woman's eyes had filled with tears of her own, as she witnessed such casual cruelty inflicted on a young dreamer. But Lisa would soon discover that sometimes, when one door closes with devastating finality, another opens in ways you never could have imagined. Lisa found herself in a small storage room behind the main stage area, surrounded by boxes of spare microphones and coils of electrical cable. The security guards had deposited her there with instructions to stay put until the event is over, and she sat on an overturned crate, still clutching the single surviving page of her life's work. The sounds of the evening's preparations filtered through the thin walls, musicians warming up, crew members shouting instructions, the distant hum of an audience beginning to fill the legendary venue. She stared down at the crumpled sheet of paper in her hands, the words of "When Your Eyes Can't See My Love" blurring through her tears. The irony wasn't lost on her. She had written a song about love transcending limitations, and now she felt more limited than ever. 3 years in Nashville, 3 years of believing that talent and determination would be enough, and it had all come crashing down in a matter of minutes. The storage room door opened with a soft creak, and Lisa quickly wiped her eyes, expecting to see another security guard or perhaps Derek coming to deliver one final humiliation. Instead, Norma Strait stepped carefully into the cramped space, closing the door behind her. In the dim light, Lisa could see that the older woman's eyes were red-rimmed, as if she too had been crying. "Mrs. Strait, you shouldn't be here," Lisa said quietly, trying to compose herself despite the devastation written across her face. "I don't want to cause any more trouble for you or your family." Norma moved slowly toward Lisa, and in the confined space, Lisa noticed something she hadn't seen before. Norma's hand trailed along the wall as she walked, and she seemed to be feeling her way rather than simply walking. When she reached Lisa, she sat down on another crate, her movements careful and deliberate. "That man had no right to treat you that way," Norma said firmly, her voice carrying a strength that belied her gentle appearance. "What I witnessed out there was cruelty, pure and simple. Derek Manning should be ashamed of himself." Lisa looked up in surprise. "You know his name?" "Honey, I've been around the music business for over 50 years. I know exactly who Derek Manning is, and I know his type. He's a failed musician who takes out his bitterness on anyone who still has the courage to dream. Norma's voice carried decades of wisdom and observation. Men like him are threatened by genuine talent and pure hearts like yours. I'm not sure I have any talent left to threaten anyone with, Lisa said, holding up the wrinkled sheet of paper. This is all that's left of 3 years of work. 3 years of believing I could make something of myself. Norma reached out and gently took the paper from Lisa's hands. In the dim light, she held it close to her face, squinting as she tried to read the handwritten lyrics. Lisa noticed that she seemed to have difficulty focusing on the words, moving the paper closer and then farther away, as if trying to find the right distance. Would you sing it for me?" Norma asked softly. "I'm having trouble making out all the words, but what I can see is beautiful." Lisa hesitated. After the humiliation she had just endured, the thought of performing for George Strait's wife in a storage closet seemed almost surreal. But something in Norma's voice, a genuine interest and kindness, gave her courage. "It's not very good," Lisa warned. "I wrote it after watching an elderly couple at the bar where I work. The woman was losing her sight, but the love between them was so strong." "Please," Norma encouraged, "I'd love to hear it." Lisa took a deep breath and began to sing, her voice soft but pure in the intimate space. "When your eyes can't see my love, let your heart remember all the ways I hold you close through every stormy weather. When the darkness steals the light and the world grows dim and cold, let my whispered promises be the warmth that you can hold. 'Cause love don't need no vision to see what's always true. When your eyes can't see my love, let my love see you through." As Lisa sang, she watched Norma's face transform. The older woman's eyes filled with tears, and her hand moved to her chest as if the words had physically touched her heart. When Lisa finished the verse, Norma sat in stunned silence for several long moments. "Oh my God," Norma whispered finally. Where did this song come from? I told you I saw this couple at the bar, and something about their love just inspired me. The way he looked at her, even when she couldn't see him looking." Lisa trailed off, confused by the intensity of Norma's reaction. Norma stood up abruptly, pacing the small space with obvious agitation. "Lisa, I need to tell you something. But first I need you to promise me that what I'm about to share stays between us, at least for now." Lisa nodded, though she wasn't sure Norma could see the gesture in the dim light. "I'm losing my vision," Norma said quietly. "It's a condition called macular degeneration. The doctors say I have maybe 6 months to a year before I won't be able to see George's face anymore, or our children, or grandchildren." Lisa felt her heart break for this woman who had shown her such kindness. "Mrs. Strait, I'm so sorry, I had no idea." "Very few people do," Norma continued. "George and I have kept it private because we didn't want it to become a story in the tabloids or something for people to pity us about. But your song, Lisa, your song captured exactly what I've been feeling. The fear, the sadness, but also the faith that love is stronger than any physical limitation." Norma turned to face Lisa directly, and in the small space, Lisa could see the vulnerability in her eyes. "George has been my everything for 53 years. He's the love of my life, my partner, my best friend. The thought of not being able to see his smile, or watch him perform, or even see the sunset we watch together every evening from our porch, it's been breaking my heart. But the song," Lisa said softly, beginning to understand. "It's about love being stronger than sight." "Exactly," Norma said, her voice growing stronger. "When you sang those words just now, it felt like you had reached into my soul and given voice to everything I've been trying to tell myself. That our love doesn't depend on my eyes. That George will still be the same man who makes me laugh every day, who holds my hand during scary movies, who brings me coffee in bed every morning." Lisa sat in amazed silence, realizing that her song, written about strangers in a bar, had somehow perfectly captured the private struggle of one of country music's most beloved couples. "There's something else," Norma continued, her voice taking on a determined quality. "Tonight's concert, it's not just any benefit show. George has been planning something special, something he's never done before in all his years of performing. He's going to invite me on stage." Lisa's eyes widened. "But you've never performed with him publicly, have you?" "Never. In 53 years of marriage, I've always stayed in the background, supporting his career from the shadows. But George knows about my condition, and he wants to honor our love while I can still see him on stage." While I can still see the audience, the lights, the magic that he creates every night. Norma paused and Lisa could sense that she was building up to something important. Lisa, I want to tell George about you, about what happened tonight with that horrible man, and about your song, your beautiful, perfect song that says everything I've been feeling, but couldn't put into words. Mrs. Strait, I appreciate everything you've done for me tonight, but I don't think your husband needs to be bothered with my problems. He has a show to perform and— You don't understand, Norma interrupted gently but firmly. George has always believed that music is about connection, about touching people's hearts with truth and emotion. What you've written isn't just a song, it's a gift. It's exactly what we've been living through, and I think it might be exactly what tonight needs. Before Lisa could respond, they heard a knock on the storage room door. A voice called out, "Mrs. Strait, your husband is looking for you. We're about 30 minutes from showtime." Norma stood and moved toward the door, then turned back to Lisa. "I'm going to talk to George. I'm going to tell him about tonight, all of it. The way you were treated, your talent, and most importantly, your song." She paused at the door. Sometimes the most beautiful things come from the most unexpected places. Tonight might just be one of those times. As Norma left the storage room, Lisa sat alone with her thoughts and her one surviving song. She had no idea that in a few minutes, Norma would be having the most important conversation of her marriage, one that would change not only Lisa's life, but also create a moment that would be remembered in country music history forever. Outside the storage room, the Grand Ole Opry House was filling with 20,000 people who had come to hear George Strait sing. None of them knew they were about to witness something that would touch their hearts in ways they never expected. The real show, Lisa was about to discover, was just beginning. 20 minutes later, Lisa remained in the storage room, uncertain whether she should try to leave or wait for someone to escort her out of the building. The sounds of the concert had begun. She could hear the opening act warming up the crowd, their voices and instruments creating a muffled symphony through the walls. Every few minutes, crew members would rush past her door, their footsteps urgent on the concrete floors as they prepared for George Strait's entrance. She was startling to think that maybe she should just quietly slip out through a back exit when the door opened again. This time it wasn't Norma who entered, but a tall, lanky man with graying hair and kind eyes that seemed to hold decades of wisdom and experience. Lisa's heart stopped as she recognized the face she had seen on countless album covers and concert posters throughout her childhood. George Strait stood in the doorway of the storage room, wearing his signature black cowboy hat and a simple white button-down shirt. His presence filled the small space with an energy that was both commanding and gentle. Behind him, Lisa could see Norma, her hand resting protectively on her husband's arm. "Lisa," George said, his famous voice even more warm and resonant in person than it sounded on the radio. "I'm George Strait. I believe you've already met my wife." Lisa shot to her feet so quickly that she nearly knocked over the crate she had been sitting on. "Mr. Strait, sir, I'm so honored to meet you. I can't believe— I never imagined—" George held up a gentle hand to stop her nervous rambling, a kind smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Norma told me what happened tonight, about Derek Manning and what he did to your songs. I want you to know that I've already spoken to the venue management, and Derek will not be working any more events in Nashville. What he did was unacceptable." Lisa felt a mix of gratitude and embarrassment wash over her. "Thank you, sir, but you didn't have to get involved. I know I shouldn't have brought my music to a catering job. I was out of line." "No," George said firmly, stepping fully into the storage room and closing the door behind him. "You were not out of line. You were following your dreams, and there's nothing wrong with that. Norma also told me about your song." Lisa glanced at Norma, who nodded encouragingly. "She sang it for me," Norma said softly. "George, it was like she had written it specifically for us." George's expression grew more serious. "Would you sing it for me, Lisa? I'd like to hear what touched my wife so deeply." Lisa felt her throat go dry. She was about to perform for George Strait in a storage closet behind the Grand Ole Opry stage. If someone had told her this would happen when she woke up that morning, she would have thought they were crazy. "Yes, sir, but I should warn you, I'm not a professional performer. I just write songs and sing in my apartment mostly. The best songs often come from the heart, not from professional training," George said kindly. "Take your time." Lisa closed her eyes for a moment, trying to center herself. Then, in the intimate space surrounded by equipment boxes and cable coils, she began to sing When your eyes can't see my love. Her voice started softly, almost tentatively, but as she continued, the emotion of the lyrics took over. She sang about love transcending physical limitations, about promises whispered in the dark, about hearts that could see what eyes could not. When she finished, the storage room fell completely silent. Lisa opened her eyes to see George and Norma staring at her with expressions she couldn't quite read. George had removed his hat and was running his hand through his hair, a gesture Norma recognized as something he did when he was deeply moved. "My God," George said finally. "Lisa, that's not just a song, that's a prayer, that's a promise, that's—" He looked at his wife, and Lisa saw a look pass between them that spoke of 5 decades of shared experiences, joys and sorrows. "That's exactly what Norma and I have been living through." Norma stepped forward and took Lisa's hands in hers. "Sweetie, would you be willing to sing that song tonight? On stage?" Lisa's knees nearly buckled. "Ma'am, I don't understand." "Sing it where?" George spoke up, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had commanded stages for 50 years. "Lisa, tonight's concert is special for several reasons. It's a benefit for music therapy programs, which means a lot to us because of our own family's experiences. But it's also special because I'm going to do something I've never done before. I'm going to invite Norma to join me on stage." "It's our 53rd wedding anniversary," Norma added, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "And with my condition, this will probably be the last time I'll be able to see George perform the way I always have." Lisa felt overwhelmed by the trust these 2 legendary figures were placing in her. "But Mr. Strait, I'm nobody. I'm just a girl who serves drinks and writes songs in her spare time. Your fans came to see you, not some unknown wannabe." "Lisa," George said, his voice gentle but firm, "I've been in this business long enough to recognize real talent when I hear it. Your song isn't just beautiful, it's necessary. It says something that needs to be said about love, about commitment, about seeing with your heart when your eyes fail you." He paused, looking at his wife with an expression of pure devotion. "Norma and I have been blessed with 53 years together. We've weathered storms, celebrated triumphs, raised children, and built a life that's been more beautiful than anything I ever dreamed possible when I was a young man in Texas. But now, we're facing our biggest challenge." Norma squeezed her husband's hand. "The doctors say I have maybe 6 months before my vision is completely gone. We've been trying to figure out how to handle that, how to adjust, how to make sure our love story continues, even when the world goes dark for me." "And then you sang your song," George continued. "And suddenly we had the words we'd been looking for, the hope we needed, the reminder that love really can transcend any limitation." Lisa stood in stunned silence, trying to process what they were asking of her. "You want me to perform with you tonight in front of all those people?" "I want you to help me tell our story," George said simply. "I want you to help me show 20,000 people that real love, the kind that lasts, is about so much more than what we can see with our eyes." Before Lisa could respond, there was another knock on the door. A voice called out urgently, "Mr. Strait, you're needed backstage, 5 minutes to showtime." George looked at Lisa intently. "I need an answer, sweetheart. Are you willing to take this leap of faith with us?" Lisa thought about her mother, who had believed in her dreams even when they seemed impossible. She thought about the 3 years of rejection and disappointment that had led her to this moment. She thought about Derek Manning's cruelty and how it had nearly broken her spirit. And she thought about the song, her song, that had somehow captured the deepest emotions of 2 people she had admired her entire life. "Yes," she whispered, then stronger. "Yes, Mr. Strait, I'll sing with you." George's face broke into the kind of smile that had charmed country music fans for decades. "Then let's go make some music, Lisa. Let's show those people what real love looks like." As they prepared to leave the storage room, Norma caught Lisa's arm gently. "Thank you," she said softly. "You have no idea what a gift you're giving us tonight." Lisa followed George and Norma through the backstage corridors of the Grand Ole Opry House, her heart pounding so hard she was sure everyone could hear it. In a few minutes, she would walk onto one of the most famous stages in country music history. She would perform her song in front of 20,000 people. She would help tell the love story of George and Norma Strait. As they reached the wings of the stage, Lisa could hear the opening act finishing their set and the crowd's anticipation building for the main event. George put his hand on her shoulder reassuringly. "Remember, Lisa, music isn't about being perfect. It's about being real. Tonight, we're going to give these people something real." The announcer's voice boomed over the sound system. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage, the king of country music, George Strait. The crowd's roar was deafening as George stepped into the spotlight. Lisa remained in the wings, clutching the wrinkled paper with her song lyrics, about to experience a moment that would change her life forever. She had no idea that she was also about to help create a moment that would touch hearts around the world and become one of the most talked-about performances in Grand Ole Opry history. The stage lights were blazing, the crowd was electric with anticipation, and Lisa Reynolds was about to step out of the shadows and into her destiny. The Grand Ole Opry House erupted as George Strait walked center stage, his presence commanding instant reverence from the 20,000 fans who had gathered for this special benefit concert. Lisa watched from the wings, her hands trembling as she clutched her song lyrics, still unable to believe she was about to share this legendary stage with her childhood hero. George opened with Unwound, his voice as smooth and powerful as ever, and the crowd sang along to every word. Lisa could see why he was called the King of Country. There was something magical about the way he connected with his audience, making each person feel like he was singing directly to them. But tonight, she noticed something different in his performance. There was an emotional depth, a vulnerability that seemed to hint at something more meaningful to come. After his third song, George paused and looked out at the sea of faces before him. The stadium lights dimmed slightly, creating a more intimate atmosphere despite the massive venue. "Y'all, tonight is special for a lot of reasons," George began, his voice carrying clearly through the pristine sound system. "First off, we're here to support music therapy programs for children in hospitals across Tennessee, and I want to thank every one of you for being part of that mission." The crowd applauded enthusiastically, but George held up his hand to continue. "But tonight is also special because it marks 53 years since I married the most beautiful, most patient, most incredible woman in the world." His voice caught slightly, and Lisa could see him looking toward the side of the stage where she and Norma were waiting. "Norma Strait has been my partner, my best friend, and my inspiration for more than half a century." The crowd's applause grew louder, many people rising to their feet as they sensed something extraordinary was about to happen. Now most of y'all know that Norma has always preferred to stay out of the spotlight. In 53 years of marriage and 5 decades of touring, she's never once joined me on stage. But tonight, George's voice grew stronger, filled with love and determination. "Tonight, I want to honor the woman who made all of this possible." Lisa watched as Norma took a deep breath beside her, her hands smoothing down her navy dress nervously. "Come here, sweetheart," George called out, extending his hand toward the wings. The crowd held its collective breath as Norma Strait, elegant and graceful despite her nervousness, walked slowly onto the stage. The applause was thunderous, a sound that seemed to shake the very foundations of the historic building. Many people in the audience were on their feet, some wiping away tears as they witnessed this unprecedented moment of intimacy from the notoriously private couple. George met his wife center stage and pulled her into his arms, and for a moment it was as if the 20,000 people watching simply disappeared. They were just George and Norma, a couple in love, sharing their most precious moment with the world. 53 years ago today, I made a promise to this woman," George said into the microphone, his arm around Norma's waist. "I promised to love her in sickness and in health, for better or for worse, until death do us part. And I want everyone here to know that it's been the easiest promise I've ever kept." Norma leaned into the microphone, her voice soft but clear. "And I want everyone to know that loving George Strait has been the greatest adventure of my life. He's not just the king of country to me, he's the king of my heart." The emotional impact of her words rippled through the audience like a wave. This was more than a concert now. This was a celebration of enduring love, of commitment that transcends fame and fortune. George signaled to his band, and they began the opening chords of "I Cross My Heart." But as the familiar melody filled the arena, George did something he had never done before. He stopped singing and turned to his wife. "This song," he said to the audience, "was the first song I ever wrote for Norma, back when we were teenagers in Texas. Tonight I want to sing it with her for the first time." As George and Norma began to sing together, their voices blending in perfect harmony, Lisa felt tears streaming down her face. But then George surprised everyone again. He gestured toward the wings, and Lisa realized he was calling her onto the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen," George said as the song concluded, "tonight I want to introduce you to someone very special. Earlier this evening, a young woman was working backstage when she should have been recognized for the incredible talent she possesses. Lisa Reynolds, would you please join us? Lisa's legs felt like jelly as she walked onto the Grand Ole Opry stage. The lights were blinding, the crowd enormous, and she felt completely overwhelmed by the magnitude of the moment. But as she reached George and Norma, she felt their supportive presence steadying her. Lisa has written a song, George continued, that captures something Norma and I have been trying to put into words for months. Sometimes the most profound truths come from the most unexpected places. And tonight, Lisa is going to share her truth with all of us. He handed Lisa a microphone, and she looked out at the sea of faces staring back at her with curiosity and anticipation. She thought about her mother, about Derek Manning's cruelty, about the destroyed songs scattered on the floor earlier that evening. Then she looked at George and Norma, who were watching her with encouragement and faith, and she found her voice. "This song is called When Your Eyes Can't See My Love," Lisa said, her voice stronger than she expected. "I wrote it about the power of love to transcend any limitation, any challenge, any darkness that life might bring." As Lisa began to sing, something magical happened in the Grand Ole Opry House. Her voice, pure and filled with emotion, carried every word to the furthest reaches of the arena. The audience, which had been buzzing with curiosity, fell completely silent. Even the seasoned musicians on stage seemed moved by the raw honesty and beauty of her performance. "When your eyes can't see my love, let your heart remember all the ways I hold you close through every stormy weather. When the darkness steals the light and the world grows dim and cold, let my whispered promises be the warmth that you can hold." Lisa could see people in the audience wiping away tears, could hear the emotional impact of her words rippling through the crowd. But it wasn't until she looked at George and Norma that she understood the full power of what was happening. George had tears streaming down his face, and Norma was openly weeping as the song gave voice to their deepest fears and strongest hopes. As Lisa reached the chorus, something unexpected happened. George began harmonizing with her, his famous voice blending perfectly with hers. Then Norma joined in, creating a three-part harmony that seemed to lift the entire arena. "'Cause love don't need no vision to see what's always true. When your eyes can't see my love, let my love see you through." The Grand Ole Opry House erupted in the longest standing ovation in its storied history. People were crying, cheering, and applauding, not just for the music, but for the raw human emotion they had witnessed. They had seen a love story that transcended celebrity, a young woman's dreams coming true, and the power of music to heal and inspire. But George wasn't finished. As the applause continued, he took the microphone once more. "Tonight, Lisa, you've given us all a gift. You've reminded us that love really is stronger than any challenge we might face, and because of that, I want to announce that Lisa Reynolds will be joining me in the studio next month to record When Your Eyes Can't See My Love as a duet." Lisa's knees nearly buckled with shock and joy. The crowd's response was deafening. George continued, "And more than that, I want to introduce her to my record label because talent like this deserves to be heard by the world." As confetti began falling from the ceiling and the band played them off, Lisa found herself in a group hug with George and Norma Strait on the stage of the Grand Ole Opry. Her dreams, which had seemed destroyed just hours earlier, were not only restored, but exceeded beyond anything she had ever imagined. In the weeks that followed, Lisa's story would spread across social media and news outlets around the world. When Your Eyes Can't See My Love would become one of the most requested songs in country music history. Derek Manning's cruel behavior would be exposed, leading to significant changes in how backstage workers were treated throughout the industry. But more importantly, Lisa learned that sometimes our greatest challenges can become the doorways to our greatest blessings. Her mother's faith in her dreams, preserved through years of disappointment, had finally been vindicated in the most spectacular way possible. As the three singers took their final bow together, George leaned over to Lisa and whispered, "Welcome to the family, sweetheart. This is just the beginning." Standing on the stage where legends were made, surrounded by 20,000 people celebrating love, music, and the magic of dreams coming true, Lisa Reynolds finally understood that she was no longer just a small-town girl serving drinks in Nashville. She was a songwriter, a performer, and most importantly, a living reminder that no dream is too big when it comes from a heart filled with genuine love and unshakable faith. The lights dimmed on the Grand Ole Opry stage, but for Lisa Reynolds they had never burned brighter.